I'm Elisa Mortensen, and this is Undo Redo.
Hello, everyone, to all the listeners, whoever you are, wherever you may be. I've taken a bit of break recently. Family and holidays came first. And what I noticed, what happened in my mind when I didn't show up for this podcast was very interesting. I made it mean that my business wasn't going to go anywhere, or like that I had to start all over, or I was making it mean something bad that I didn't show up, but I actually really loved what I was doing. But for some reason, I shamed myself. And I thought, isn't that interesting? I feel like I'm ashamed for not showing up these last 2 weeks. And I just wanted to put it out there that if there's things that you expect of yourself that you don't show up for sometimes, and you put extra pressure and shame on yourself, just notice, like, why do I feel like I need to do that to myself, right? It's not like I let people down or dropped the ball. I just took a break. But once I realized that I was putting the pressure and shame on myself, and it was coming from me, I instantly let it all go, and I was able to relax and enjoy the rest of my time away with family. And I had this podcast written and in my mind that I was going to pre-schedule it for when I was gone, and it just didn't happen. So when I noticed I was beating myself up over it, I just kind of let that all go and was able to enjoy. But I knew that I would share it with you as soon as I got back. And because I had it in my mind, because I had just written it right before I left for the few weeks that I didn't do a podcast, I was able to refine it in my mind and observe when defensiveness happened and how it happens. So I'm really excited to talk with you about it. We spent Thanksgiving in Las Vegas with my oldest son who lives there, and my second child met us there, and we brought my youngest with us. So that was almost everyone. The one that was missing is the one that's in Maui, my only girl. So, and I have not been with her and seen her. We just kept in contact over Snap and video chats and things. So I had to go see her. She turned 21 and it was Christmas and she wasn't coming home. So we went out to Maui for just under 2 weeks, and it was amazing. And I really was so grateful that we had that we made it over there, and that we had some of the best, most unforgettable adventures and made memories with her. And it was very precious, and we had such meaningful connection and such a bonding experience that we were able to see where she was living and the people that were in her life over there. And it was so much fun. So in today's episode, let's set out. I'm planning on setting out to have a conversation to you about when you are suddenly heightened in a situation, when someone calls you out for something or starts accusing you of starting problems, and you really don't think that was you. It's their interpretation of it, and then we become defensive. All right, that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about us recognizing it in them. But first, I want to talk about what it looks like in us so we're able to see it when it happens to them. And then we can understand that we are being their threat. Because that's what defensiveness is. Defenses come up when you feel a threat coming in. So are we that person that causes other people to get defensive? Let's find out. And let's find out what it looks like inside us when it happens to us. All right. So when you're having a conversation with someone and you immediately feel like, I did not say that. That is not what happened. That was not my intention at all. Right. I did not mean it that way. Or how dare you say that to me? I would never. I can't believe you even would think that of me, or would think that I would do that. All of those are considered under the umbrella of defensiveness. And defensiveness brings about any form of urgency, needing to stand up for yourself, or of course defend yourself immediately, or to convince them, I'll show them, they can't get away with that, or this stops right now. I do so much and this is how they treat me, or I deserve more than this. It's any state of putting your guard up, right? Kind of going to battle, trying to prevent incoming war happening. They're attacking you, right? So this is what it looks like in my mind. What I start to do is, it sounds like what I just said, but it starts to look like what actions I take. If you had a camera in my mind, it would be, I go over all the reasons that what they said is not true. I build a case, right? I'm building a case and I'm looking for all that evidence is what they said is not even true. I make a bunch of points, I gather a bunch of points as to why I reacted the way that I did and why what I did or said was warranted. So I'm finding I'm building a case against it, right? Or for it. And I want you to be able to watch out for your mind doing this, because our minds literally believe the drama and the opinions that we're feeding it and what we're saying about it. So I literally will just think that I am interpreting, or just, I'm just telling myself about what's happening. I'm explaining to myself about what's really happening, but I'm not even aware that I'm becoming defensive. So it's a red flag when you start having to convince other people's. It's a red flag when you start having to convince others of your way. So if I'm having to convince everybody that my way is the best and the way I saw it is true, not the way you're seeing it, then that's defensiveness. And what it looks like inside my mind also is I stop hearing the other person's words, like really hearing what they're saying. And I stop trying to understand where they're coming from, and I can't wait to set them straight. So watch out for these red flags. And I find ways in which they are not doing their part. Like, I'm doing it. I'm doing this. Like they're not really putting any effort in or doing anything on their part. And I respond with things like, yeah, but, because I can't wait to talk. Like, well, yeah, but, and then I counter everything. I get sarcastic, right? I get belittling. I show them that I know best so I can have the upper hand. And I'm determined to win so I can prove them wrong. Physically, it looks like, I have my arms put back. I look away or even shake my head when they're talking. And I want to point out that I'm not actually in any life or death situation, but my ego thinks it is. Because if I were to look around the room, like nothing's threatening me, but for some reason our egos feel so under attack. And so the defense feels like a real fight within us. And the truth about being defensive is defensiveness is the arch enemy of connection and intimacy. So it's also the arch enemy of listening. So if you're looking to connect with someone and to have a close, meaningful, intimate relationship with them where everybody's being authentic and honest and we're not having to put on any show, then your listening will be cut off and the connection will disconnect, and you won't be able to be close with that person when your defensives go up. So if you can relate to anything that I'm saying so far, being defensive, when I looked it up, it's defined as becoming anxious to avoid criticism. It's defined as behavior intended to defend or protect ourselves and our ego. So now that we know what defensiveness is, it's just a protection of our ego, and ego doesn't want to be wrong. Ego wants to be right. Ego wants to know it all. Ego wants to be the top dog. And it's threatened at that point. So it's an automatic fear of wrongdoing is what defensiveness is. And we don't want to be the cause of blame for the issue. It's really important to us. So we get really defensive and we're like, yeah, well, and instantly like the gloves come on. But it's the reaction of war. It's a fight. It's like a mental fight. It's not life or death. It's not really over any war issues. But the first thing we do to get out of that is just to normalize this feeling is really intense. And I want to fight back. I want to attack back. I feel attacked and I want to attack back. But it's not as dangerous as our ego has convinced us that it is. Like most of the times we absorb, everybody has ego, but to varying degrees, right? From narcissist all the way down to pushover, but it's a mental war. It's believing in our own ego and it being threatened that actually causes it. It's just a mental war, and it's very convincing the way we think about it. So one way to stop being defensive is you can look for some of the warning signs that I've said and see it within yourself when you have interactions with others, and just notice, when am I suddenly heightened? And be curious, like take an inventory. Who am I heightened most with most often? Like with who do I feel this way most often? And how many times, how often? Usually you'll notice it's with someone like this very person is very critical type of person. This type of person is critical with, when you're talking to them, they're critical about people that aren't there. And you could possibly say that they're critical of you when you aren't there and they're with other people. It's the person who keeps trying to change you or fix you to their liking. Like, you should do it this way. Well, what you got to do is, well, you haven't learned yet. Then, it's just people that are very judgmental. you're going to be very heightened with. We have tendencies to want to defend ourselves more around them because we expect more threat coming from them. We don't want to be told that we're doing everything wrong. We don't want to be told that we should do everything different. So it's a threat to us to have someone keep telling us those things. So in what way are you someone else's critical person? In what way are you the judgmental person? Is it with your kids or with your team members? Can they do anything right? You know, if you're a caregiver, is the person you're caring for, you're trying to help care for themselves, are they doing nothing wrong? Because if so, just notice, if they're defensive all the time, you've created an environment of disconnecting, right? When we become defensive, we disconnect. And also when we're a threat to other people with our criticism and our judgment, it disconnects as well. We don't want to be different. We don't want to be constantly told that we have to be different than we really are and make different decisions, and that it would be better if we did something else. We like what we were doing. We have really good reasons to do what we're doing. But when they do not accept us, right? You want to stop telling them any true things about you. You won't be living into the truth of who you really are around them anymore. Can you see it? You just disconnect from them because you can't be your true self around them. They're always trying to change you, make you be someone different. So you just become someone different around them to save your ego from any threat. Because if they knew the truth, they'd just try to change you. And that doesn't feel very good. So when you end up getting defensive, you're trying to retract and distance yourself to protect yourself, right? It leaves people lonely. Even when they're surrounded by a lot of people, those people who are critical and judgmental and have only horrible, negative things to say and think they know best in everyone's situation, it just becomes a very lonely and disconnected way of being. They don't really feel fulfilled inside. They're not accepting what reality is or who is really in front of them and what those people are really living their lives, the decisions those people are making. So how are you that way in some people's lives right now, and with who? And can you just notice it? It's just everything that we've talked about. And then how are you like the opposite person? How do you make others defensive, and how are you defensive with certain people in your life? It's just good to know, because we can definitely control who we connect with and who we don't, because connection happens in the mind. It doesn't actually take the other person to connect. I can totally be connected with, say, an estranged child, or if I was estranged, if my parents were estranged from me, they could totally stay connected with me, and I could be totally estranged from them and not like them. Like, there's two different people that have two different thoughts. So one could be having a totally like against you, and the other one could be having a totally for you. So if connection is a mental construct, like we make it up in our minds and we feel connected to people and we don't feel connected to people, we have more control over it than we think. And what I believe is possible, and why I coach, is because connection can happen at any time, and especially through conflict. People think that we disconnect over conflict, but what I teach my clients and people in my world is, when you have a desire for more connection, you can find a way to do it differently. Now, it's upsetting because we're not really taught this in school, right? When something upsets us right away, or we have these feelings and we want to react right away. But here's the truth. Most things don't need to be fixed immediately. Think about it. It feels like you got to stand up for it right now, and this can't happen, and put down the hammer. But really, things don't need to be fixed like that. You can have a pause. It's okay to take a pause and address things later, especially when you feel that unsafe threat, when you're super upset. Changing how we react to things takes practice, and changing how we word things and communicate with people takes work. It's kind of like a workout at a gym. You have to show up and put in the work and be patient to see the results later. So you have to start implementing it. You have to start putting yourself in those situations where you can do the reps in order to hold more tension and create more space for a lot of mistakes. And many of us have a habit of responding defensively when we feel criticized. And who wouldn't? Like, we're human. Instead of focusing on what others think, we can build inner confidence by looking inward and paying attention to how we feel. I feel defensive. I'm going to take a pause. They look defensive. I can self-reflect. How am I threatening them? Right? The stronger we feel inside and the more connected we are, if we connect vertically, if we can ask heaven to show us, or Mother Earth to be with us, or whatever you want to call it, there's less need to worry about what other people think and say about us, because we are more rooted in what we truly believe and who we know we are. Because so there's an inner confidence that comes with it. When we have good self-esteem, we can hear someone else's thoughts and opinions without feeling like they're attacking us and without making it mean something bad about us. It's not such a threat. And then we don't get defensive because our ego doesn't like get out of control. And I know there's a lot of mindfulness and meditation that can help with this, just because it's a redirection of your mind. You don't just run with the first thought that happens. You can bring yourself back to like, actually, that's not accurate. I'm going to go back to what I do know. It just gives us a moment to breathe when we pause and make a lot of room for ourselves and accept negative feedback, knowing it might not be accurate. What if we could just have the confidence that I know they said that about me, but they're wrong. I'm really not that person. Or I did act that way, but I'm actually not that person. So I'm going to work on not acting that way. I'm not going to be who they think I am. But we don't have to get defensive about it and cause further disconnection. If someone isn't attacking you personally, their feedback can actually be a chance for you to grow. And I know this sounds crazy to people because you don't want to be the person who's told that you're being horrible, but if you're open to it, you can listen and you can learn. You can learn about what your hand in it is in the way that they interpret what you're doing. You can think about where their opinion might be coming from, and could it even be a window for you to see their insecurities or what they're worried about and have nothing to do with you, because they have a confirmation bias in their head that they're looking for something to be true. Oftentimes we become that thing when we're defensive and they're like, oh, see, there it is. This approach of the pause and noticing when you're heightened and who's heightening you and being curious makes you stronger and more confident over time in these areas. If you thought of anyone while listening to this, please share it with them now, because that is how heaven reaches us and we become a better version of ourselves through other people. And so we can be that person to others. All right. If you want help with this, this is my favorite. I love talking about relationship and connection and meaningful connection in the lives of others. Leading our families and our teams is my very favorite. I want us to be able to be a good space to lift others. And that is my passion. So thanks for listening. Rate and subscribe and keep becoming a better version of yourself so you can have a greater impact on those around you that you care for. Love you, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.